So we jumped to digital in 2006. We went from 3D to 4D to 5D to 6D, 7D, and 8D. And we're now at a situation where we're embracing common data environments using Dalux. And we're beginning to see that blockchain is where we want to be to synchronize this. And it's coming in slowly and clearly everywhere. Okay? So what I'm doing this morning is a blended learning platform. We are currently doing Horizon 2020, where we're trying to do blended learning, where blockchain is going to incentivize and offer a reward to people so that you encourage them to take more of what you're talking about. So we're inspiring the demand for sustainable energy skills. Now, I don't need to tell you that all of this digitalization is disruptive, and even the dogs in the street know that we're disruptive, fragmented, and work in insanely minimal margins. So how can we improve our profits? How can we improve where we are and what we're doing? So, blockchain has gone through 4 editions. First of all, it was cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, you all know of. 2.0 was moving into smart contracts. 3.0 is moving into digital apps. And it's the apps is where I'm looking at today, trying to make them work together, and we're going to go into that a little bit more so that you see what I'm talking about. And then 4, which is what's coming, is going to be smart cities, where everything is in unison and using each other and of benefit. Yeah? Please feel free to ask if there's anything up here. So what is a blockchain? It's a block and it's a chain. The block is a piece of data. I'm probably talking to the converted, but I'll just go through it. A block is a piece of data, a text, data, whatever. It gets a hashtag, and then it gets it's put in the block. The next block is linked to it, and it's a new piece of data. So it could be Mary buys a house for €1 million. Mary sells the house to John for 1.5 million. John sells to Peter for 2 million. So each of these are linked, and this is the chain that makes the blockchain. It then gets sent out to all the computers in the domain, and so it means that you can't go in and Mary can't lie and say, I bought the house for 180, I want to get more. So it becomes 3 things happen. It's data, it's a chain. The magic happens when you distribute the ledger, and so it fixes it and makes it transparent, clean, and it means that you can't tamper with it. This means you're removing the risk. It improves your communications, your understanding. All involved are up to date. There's no things not revisioned, so everything is kosher and moving where you want it to be. So this puts you in the position of going for a higher quality design. And it's the future perfect of integrated practice. It's where we will be going and what we will be doing. When I started into digitalization, I thought I was working with the implementation of a new technology. I did a PhD and I ended up finding out it's how we collaborate with each other. How can I trust what you're putting into the pot and what you're putting into the pot and know that it's all coordinated and working properly? So this is a huge element of trust, and this is what happens in collaboration. We have to trust each other and know what everyone's doing is going to be of benefit. If you do this, how do you incentivize someone to do it? And this again is where blockchain comes in. It can reward that effort you do. Currently, there's no incentive. Go home 5 o'clock, just do your work. It's someone else's problem if it's not coordinated, if the door's in the wrong place, on the architects to the engineer's set of drawings or whatever. So how do you make it that people want it all to be seamless and integrated? So blockchain comes with trace and traceability. Secondly, it's a ledger. And thirdly, it can reward such practices. And this is one of the key points that I'm making in what I talk about. If I want to get, the 4 of us are working on a project and we want to engage stakeholders before handover. Let's say we're building a house, it's near zero and you're promising that it will deliver energy efficiencies for the next 20 years. Currently, once you get paid, you're out the door and you don't care. How do you make someone who wants to give you the house you need? And this is where blockchain comes in. If I say this building is going to save you 20% over 20 years, then blockchain can monitor the bills, or it can monitor the sensors in the building, and after the first year it can see, have I saved 20% on what a building of this size would normally do, as in a lead thing. If that is true, then blockchain can be rigged to pay me 5% dividend, or whatever you want to agree. If I do this every year for 20 years, after 20 years, my little pension in the Bahamas is growing. So I'm incentivized to give you the building that you need, not the building that I can get away with. And that is key to the whole thing. So suddenly you're incentivized. Suddenly, if the three of you are bidding on a contract and you're the cheapest, you always come in the cheapest, and you're the star architect, or you always come in, if you want our name, you're going to pay, and you're the guy who's going to make the building perform, currently, you get the contract every time. A lot of people come in low with their low margins and hope to make it up with their change orders, RFIs. Yeah? So how do we stop that happening and get it? So using a blockchain, you can actually get it to give you a dividend. And that dividend can pay again, again, again. What's not to like if you've done the building that you've promised? So, yes, sir. I'll come to that. This is our problem with...
because there are civil laws
that
regulate things that even if something is put into the agreement, and if it was not realistic, it's not working. You cannot ask or promise things that are not realistic. Something being realistic is about your resources, your knowledge, many things. But in any case, if there is a lawyer, they will start discussion and they will, strike it all out.
Very true. When we start talking about smart chains or smart contracts, then where we are is we're beginning to look at, I presume you all spend most of your time doing ICT contracts. You're looking at, you're checking, you're covering that you've got everything where it wants to be. That has to change in that we become a bit more lax, and we have to cut out the lawyer if we can, or it's a mind change where the smart contract through blockchain will be transparent and validate the work that's done, so that when I've been told to put in trays with mechanical or electrical on it, once I take this photo through the CDE, blockchain can verify that what's there is what's in the model, and it can certify payment. The problem with this is, when you're going out to contract, your LOD 100, your generic building, wind back. When you're going out to contract, theoretically nothing can change when it gets there. But currently, LOD 100, 203, 350, 4, 5, 3, 4, and 500 should not change, but they do. And they change because what the engineer has said what they want. 300, 350 is what the contractor orders, 400 is what he gets, and 500 is what he bills. And that distance, if you want as-built drawings, you pay a lot of money because you basically have to survey the whole building again, and you pay twice. If you're using a laser scanner, you all know the Louis Vuitton building in Paris. By Frank Gehry. If you look at that, they had a scanner go around every Friday. They brought it into the 3D model. They did a clash detection, and everywhere where there was red, it would go in and see, is the model correct, is the building correct, and it would be corrected. So that when they finished, they had an accurate digital twin, an as-built model of what they needed and what they got. Yeah? So it makes you respectable and gives you recognition by being up there. Frank Gehry says everybody that works for him now has to pre-qualify using CATIA. They have to take all his methods so that he's not red-faced going to the client saying, you said 50 million, it's 247 million. Yeah? So it makes it a lot smoother. So The other thing that blockchain can do is what I just said, it can validate. So once you've done the work, the blockchain can validate that, and so then it can organize the payment. So it becomes the single source of truth. And if you go away today with anything embedded in your mind, it's the TSST, it's the single source of truth. And that's what it will bring to construction, and that's what it will bring to all our lives every day. It can reward your practices, it can handle what-if-then scripts, it has an intrinsic value, and it's the gift that keeps giving. Having a database is a collector of a lot of information. Having a lot of information can overwhelm the user. You need to filter it, you need to see how you're using it, and you need to map the space. It can work and should work in reverse. So it should map out where you're going, what you're doing. It should make your life easier, just as your mobile phone makes your life easier, whether it's you're going looking at the how to get from A to B, whatever. It's changed the way we work. And blockchain is not an ubiquitous thing that you buy and put in like this. It's the apps that we're using that integrate and talk to each thing. So it's changing the way we work. It can also offer verification, so it can validate the work, it can then verify that you've done the work. And when I come back to our blended learning, it's this verification that we're looking at. Because often when you go and do a job interview, they want to see your degrees, they want to see your diplomas, they want to see this, and you usually have to have them in original formats. And if you don't have them, you have to write to the school where you got them from and get this validated. We're now looking at a verification process where you can put your degrees, your certificates, whatever you want, on our verified platform, and then you can send a link to a prospective employer, and they can see that you are who you say you are. You're not a lot of hot air. So that's the angle we're working on at present. If you know what a Bitcoin is, you know what it's all these numbers, digits, what have you. The tasks are completed, blockchain can host an interface that vouches for the work, releases payment or reward as appropriate. And this is the point you were coming into. If we start looking at smart contracts, how the legal team are always looking at holding stuff close until you pay for it. So they won't share stuff, they'll always refer back to the contract for every change you make, and it becomes a process of working back and forth. As we find ways of implementing smart contracts, we're going to have to find a new paradigm or a new mindset which allows us to bring these areas into how we work and what we work at. You might know Malachi Matthews. He's at TU Dublin. He's just completed a PhD looking at all of this. And he was one of the guys that first talked about having an AEC coin, so architecture, engineering, construction coin, so that as you learned more and grew with your experience, you can actually pocket coins. And so over a 5-year spell, you might actually end up with 50 in your pocket, 100. If you go to a job interview and you've got 100 in your pocket and the competitor has 2, the odds are you'll get the job. You're the guy who's showing the keenness and everything that you want in there. Here's our smart contract. To implement this new environment, smart contract is needed. It uses if-then structures to administer the work. They provide protocols to verify, simplify, and enforce performances. Once a party executes a task or a milestone is achieved, a payment can be triggered. Using BIM supplies a vehicle to this end, but it means that the model needs to become a digital twin. A digital twin needs a custodian, and this would be the architectural technologist. I teach architectural technology. So we're kind of moving there, but as you rightly said, there is still issues to be addressed. Common data environment, CDEs. Currently we're using Dalux. You might know BIM 360. I don't know what's being used there. Revizzo is also here. But what it is, it becomes a cloud database or cloud place where everything goes up. So often you'll take your phone and you'll go around showing the work you've done. It goes up, it gets verified in the cloud. It means that once it's done properly, Cisco are using this quite a lot here in Ireland, I know. So we're beginning to see this happen. So we're not out of the woods yet, I agree with you 100%, but we're beginning to, we're seeing in a lot of cases, a lot of big engineering firms are now buying up everyone they need. If you want an acoustic engineer, if you want whatever, you put them in the one umbrella so that this issue of being fragmented and disorganized gets vaporized, yeah? Here we have Spot. Spot currently goes through a building site every day or every week, and he just laser scans the place, and he's doing what Frank Gehry did 10 years ago. You then do a class collection to find out, are you ahead of schedule, are you behind schedule, has something not been done properly, whatever, yeah? So we're going to see increasingly that buildings are not passive, that they meet the building regs where your wall has 300 millimeters of insulation. We're going to see buildings are more and more going to have sensors and monitors in them so that they can track how the building is being used. Is there 20 people in this room? Is the air conditioning too much? Is it not? That's coming in. There's a building by Deloitte in Amsterdam called The Edge, and it already has everybody that works there has the Deloitte app. And so if you're working in the morning at a meeting, it will give you a meeting room. If you then need to read something, it will put you in a quiet room. And if you need to go to a team meeting, it will find you a team meeting room. And this is happening. If you want, go look at The Edge, Deloitte. I don't have it with me today, but it is a good example of how we're moving from being passive to being proactive. This will lead on to smart cities, because as the buildings begin to talk to each other, they begin to say, I've got an excess of energy, do you want it? We need 20 taxis for the end of a conference, etc., etc. So it will start to become, from passive to active, it will become dynamic, and it can have a knock-on effect of making a consumer into a prosumer. So rather than taking, you're in a position where you might actually give. So this is where I now come into where we're working on today. We're working on a platform that allows you to do blended learning. And this is where we're beginning to get the tools, and I'm going to share the tools we're using with you so that it demystifies some of the blockchain. That's a big wall, yeah? So we have a situation, blended learning, where you have a trainee, you give them modules. If you complete the modules, you get a reward. You get a badge, you get a certificate, whatever it is you need, yeah? We also need, if that platform is going to be robust, that platform needs to be able to have a trainer so that new modules can come in, skill sets can change, assessment can change, and that can be rewarded as well. So you need to have a platform that's giving the trainer, but is also allowing trainees to come in with new stuff. Otherwise, once you launch, it's history, because everything changes at a rate of knots currently. So then we have our permission blockchain, we have our users, our server, our database, and this was done at the time for a program called BIM Cert. What we're now looking at is if we have our trainee and trainer, we end up with this series of things in the middle, which means that we could host a job portal so trainees and trainers can begin to match and say, I would like you to come work for me, or you're now skilled in this, we can use you. You can have third parties making modules. So Kingspan, Rockwool, whoever, might come in with how you insulate your building, how you retrofit, and they would come in with a CPD module that could come in to our modules and it could fit on the platform. And we also have third parties where someone like Jacobs, Arups, some big firms might actually want their employees to be to a certain standard, so we can actually map out a training journey for them so that if everybody takes it, everybody in the company is up to the same speed and up to the same level. Are you with me? We're moving away from buildings a little bit, we're into teaching and learning now. So the way you do that, and now we're beginning to look at the tools we are using. So number one is we have a program here called, and they're all open source, so you're all free to go and use them. This one is Moodle, and basically it's an online version of PowerPoint. So you can make sheets, you can have links that allow you to make connections and take people to where you want them to go. So you can have a link that says what is BIM, what is whatever, and so you can take them through, you can have questions, and when you finish the questions, you can either be quizzed or you can get your accreditation that this is where you are and what you get. We're also beginning to look at open badges. Open badges as well are open sourced dApps, digital applications. And what these allow you to do is they allow you to go in and make the connections of who wants to talk to who and how's it going to be. So none of you in here are data people. We're all in the construction industry. So this is why I've chosen to do today is what's the buzzwords you should know rather than going and become a guy writing code. Yeah? So do we have internet? There's a little video in there. If it's not going to show, I'll pass. Yeah, okay, all right, leave it. It's fine. So this is how we begin to map what we're going to do. So we're using open badges, we've got our APIs, you come in, we've got a learning record store, and what we're going to do is take you through that as you progress in your learning, we're mapping it, and when we get it into the store, then later we can verify it, and if you go to a new employee or you can show that you are certified in MEP for retrofit, whatever. So this is where we are and what we're at. And so that process can work where if you want to go out to a firm and offer them the ability to get up to speed, you can have a company register, you can ask them what their ambitions are, and then they can invite employees, and we can do a self-assessment. So this means that the blue-collar workers, you guys, can be invited in, and we're going to say, give you feedback how much you actually know about BIM, and then say where your gaps are, what you need to get to the next level if you want to be 1193 Part 3 compatible. And so then we can map and verify the results and give feedback to the company so that you can see, has this been a fruitful process? Is it something they need to look at, do again? So this would start with, on your laptop, we'd start this process, a BIM journey. What is it you want your employees, what is it you want to get yourself? This could be from a company, it could be from your own wish list. I feel I'm missing X, Y, and Z. I would like to get that into my experience. So then we can get you to log on, and by logging on we then get round the GPDR things that now we can ask you questions and we can begin to put you into the mix. So we could ask you what's your company's name, how many employees, are you in building environment, are you architects, are you engineers, whatever it is, so that we can begin to filter what would be of interest to you and what would not be of interest to you. We can then ask you, are you just on the edge or are you mainstream, hard on, and so we can self-assess how far you're going. And then we can go through your different departments. You might have a sales department, you might have an architect's department, you might have whatever it is, and so you can actually verify how much they need to know. Need to know, nice to know, whatever. We can then go down to different users in the departments, what might be their requirements. And then we can begin to, populate this skeletal framework with names. And once we have the names, we can invite them to come in. And so then you will get an invitation. Bob, we've assessed we'd like you to get smarter. So here you go. So once you're in here, we're going to do a self-assessment where we're going to look at your skills, and then we're going to give you an overview of where your gaps are and what you need to be to get where we want you to be. So then we'll ask you questions like, I understand the content and can apply and explain it. How would you rate your knowledge and skills regarding smart grid systems? So you can say, I'm an expert, I know nothing, or whatever. And so as you begin to give these answers, we begin to build a profile of who you are. So then we can say, you need to take these modules to get, no, these you're good at, the orange ones you need to come on and work with. And then we can rate how good you are so that you can kind of find out, am I doing it right or do I need to change? So then we can make the modules available to you and you can start taking the modules, and as you complete them, you start building up your worth. So then you can find out how well you've done. You can download your results and you can see how well you've done with your peers in the department. Management can see how well it has been adopted. And so if it's poor, if it's good, you're getting feedback. And if it's 50%, you might actually say, maybe you need to go back in and take a different module. And so we supplement where you are to where you want to be. And this way, you're able to upskill your workforce and get better to where you want to be. So that's basically it. Management can then have a traffic light system seeing who performed well, who's orange or who's red and didn't. So management getting feedback of how the workforce is working. It's a little bit Big Brother's watching you, but if any of you are in the business, you know Big Brother's watching you. And then you can work again on where you want to be. So then you can upskill your management. It can be that you find out that there's an area that's missing, and that's where the trainer comes in, and so you can add some modules so you can cover that hole as well. So we're offering this platform in which things can change in the construction industry. So that's what I had to show you. If you want, I didn't hear we had internet, but if places to go to is Open Badges, and they have dApps, which pretty much, there's loads of them to find out which one is compatible with you. You'd be looking for one that's compatible with Moodle. You can also go into something called blockcerts.org, and that is a place over in the States, South Dakota, or Midwest. And what they do is they will verify that the degrees you say you have are correct, because they will validate and verify for you. So this means that they also talk to Open Badges, and they also talk to this. So this begins to give you a network on which to get over blockchain being a wall that I'm looking over. Yeah? So that's essentially what I wanted to say to you today, guys. I'd be keen to get your feedback. Was it relevant, or was I off?
I'm scared now.
You're scared?
Why? Because you are not disrupting the AEC with this development, this platform. It's the disruption of the whole global education system. Why do you need a degree if you can have a badge?
Well, this is EU funded. And the EU wants that if you come from Greece, Portugal, and you want to work in Finland, we will acknowledge your what you've done. And it currently, I'll take Italy as an example. We were just talking about this yesterday. Italy has 19 different areas, districts, and each of them have their own requirements for what an architect is, what an engineer is, what a whatever it is. And somehow they build, but if you're in Milano and you want to go build in Napoli, there's a lot of crap. So EU wants to make it flat, because with the freedom of movement means you have to have you have to recognize the skills you got. And we need to reskill people, because if we're going to go to where we want to be, if we want to, I didn't mention carbon once this morning, but if we're going to start measuring our carbon, how do you measure carbon? How much carbon is in this existing building? You can do it. You can go make a model of this, and you can extract your quantities, and instead of putting dollars or euros against it to find how much it costs, you can put in CO2 against it. So you can see that this here has 3 million tons of CO2 equivalent. Yeah? And so that means that you could actually go and get, I don't have a piece of paper here, but you could theoretically go get a certificate that says there's 3 million tons of CO2 in this building. And as long as I keep this building, I can trade this certificate like stock exchange. There's guys out in Dubai that need, because of the Kyoto Agreement, they need to supplement, they need to buy credits. So I can sell my credits until the 1st of January every year. I can get this building giving me money. That's where we are. We're not doing it. It's been talked about that there are carbon trading things, but it's still in its infancy. But we have to deal with CO2. We have to deal with how our buildings perform, and increasingly, this is going to become relevant and allow us to do that. Does that kind of answer your question? Knowing the problem is halfway to fixing it, because you're ahead of the posse. Yeah? Anyone else? Was it interesting?
I want to ask you, you obviously have to work with a lot of, like, say, older directors and people like that to try and get them to adopt new systems and technology. Do you have any advice in, like,
How to get there?
Yeah.
Bottom up. We have all, I teach, and I would say my colleagues are all very much, they should learn how to draw with a pencil first.
Yes, we got a lot of that. Yeah.
And so what I do is I go into my students and say, you've been asked to do something, you can do it with a pencil or you can do it digital. They see the benefit, they adopt the benefit, and then it starts feeding up. So if you want to implement something in your organization, do it from ground up. When we first started moving from AutoCAD to Revit, 2006, 2007, no, 2008, which is a few years ago, we sent 2 of our students out on an internship to quite a well-known architect's office in Copenhagen. And he said, oh, we work with AutoCAD. And so he had a building, and he gave them the job to do. They needed plan sections, elevations for a meeting he was going to in a week to. It's the start of a project. And the 2 guys looked at each other and they thought, are we going to do this in AutoCAD? And so they said, right, we'll do it in Revit, and we'll do all the deliverables as DWGs, PDFs, whatever. So they built it in Revit, and so it was coordinated, and it was, elevations matched floor plans, matched sections. And so they delivered all the deliverables into the boss as DWGs, PDFs, whatever it was, and he went off to the meeting with a load of drawings under his arm. We're a few years back, but it's still happening. I've just been to Germany, and they're 16 years behind us. I don't know how. So he goes off to the meeting, he comes back with all the drawings redlined, move this, move that, do that. And so he gave it to the guys before lunch on the Tuesday, and he thought that will keep them occupied till Friday. So they went to lunch, and that afternoon, the 2 boys come in with all the revisions made, and he just picked the first one, held it by the lapel, and he says, how did you do that? And they said, looked at each other and said, we did it in Revit. Before that evening was over, he transferred 2 of his licenses from AutoCAD to Revit. So stories like that tell you how do you get there, yeah? But it's hard to go top down unless it rarely happens. I have to give credit to the United Kingdom when they did the BIM incentive that all public works had to be digital for 2016. That was top down, and that was rare. It was rare for conservatives to do that because most of their members are SMEs, But, yeah. So, seeing is doing. If you can show it delivering,
evidence-based approach, like.
evidence-based, good word, yeah. Anyone else? How you find it? Huh? Anyone else, newcomers? We are about done, so I'll say thank you very much. I hope it's been of use. As I say, if I'd gone more into the nitty-gritties, you're not code makers. You need to have the overview. And that's very important in training, knowing what we can do out there and seeing how it can help you in your business and where you want to go. Okay? So I wish you well. I'm 64. I wish I was coming out into the market now. I think it's so exciting. So go and kill. Yep. Thank you very much.